It's time to accelerate. Hi, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Join me as I host conversations with the leading experts in sales, marketing, sales automation, sales process, leadership, management, training, coaching, any resource that I believe to help you accelerate the growth of your sales, your business, and most importantly, you. Hello, and welcome to Accelerate. This is another edition of Frontline Friday with my very special guest, Bridget Gleason. And just like last week, we actually happen to be in the same place, same time. So we have this unusual event of recording the episode, seeing each other face to face. So, Bridget,
which is
welcome.
Too bad that they can't see us face to face. It's so much better to do it face to face. Like I get all your facial expressions. And for those of you who don't know, he moves his hands. His face is animated. Like lots is happening. Lots is happening as he's talking.
That's right. We're giving.
I like it.
It's a performance.
I like it.
As I say about sales, it's an experiential art.
It is. It's
Podcasting,
a great art.
The same thing.
Okay.
Experiential.
All right.
So, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm in the beautiful Southern California, Empire West of Accelerate.
Yes.
Not as west as you can go.
Well, we're not in Hawaii, but
right.
Yeah, we haven't established the outpost there yet, but we're working on it.
Okay. So beautiful day. Great to be here. No complaints.
Yeah, it's beautiful. We're looking at the bay in San Diego, cruise ships, aircraft carriers for the Navy, lots of activity out there.
But we're going to talk about sales.
We're going to talk about sales.
And the topic today,
and how
Andy.
Unusual, because we never talk about sales.
I know. Well, sometimes we don't. We've gotten really off topic, running, weather, etc. But today, what's the topic today?
So the topic today is we're going to talk about sales planning because as you listen to this, we're in the month of December. And that's
big planning month.
That's the time to start thinking about what are we going to do next year. And not just what are we going to do next year, but what are we going to do differently next year? Because it's easy enough to just do the same thing. But if we do the same thing, we're going to get the same results.
Unless we've been getting good results.
Yeah, I would argue that you need to change even then, right?
I would too, but I would also argue let's not throw the baby out
No.
with the bathwater.
You don't start from scratch, but standing still is like going backwards.
Okay, I agree.
Okay. So as you look at a sales plan, let's talk about two different sales plans. Sales plan that a manager needs to put together, and a sales plan that an individual needs to put together. And what should be in that plan? What should they be thinking about? What are the things they have to include to make it a worthwhile use of their time to put it together and to use as a roadmap for going forward in 2017? I mean, to me, they're not exercises. These are documents that you use. These become your operational planning documents that you execute.
Hey, Andy, when I was consulting, there was a large multinational company that asked me, every year in fourth quarter, they had this planning exercise. And the regional managers...
The planning exercise, I like that word, yes.
Okay, because that's what it was.
Sure.
And it was this huge binder, hundreds of pages around what they were going to do to succeed in their regions and territory mapping. And literally, it was a giant 3-ring binder.
And did they ever look at it once they put it together?
There's the question.
There's the rub.
So one of the things before I got the consulting engagement, someone had introduced me, and I ended up, this was at my recommendation, is I said, what happens to that planning document? Nothing. So there are hours and hours and hours because these all get presented up and then they sit on a shelf.
Right.
And so what I did with the managers was let's create a 1-page actionable document based on what's in that binder. What are you going to do differently? What are you going to do daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly? Let's look at things that are actionable and how do you know that you're on track?
Right.
And it's hard to do.
It's
actually, in some ways, easier to just spew out a bunch of stuff that you're never going to look at. You just generate.
Yeah, I don't want to be held accountable for anything.
And then you're not accountable.
Right.
It's beautiful.
Lack of accountability. Life is great. All right, so my take on the sales planning things at the beginning of the year is that the window of the planning horizon is 90 days. As far as sales is concerned, I don't think you can put together a plan that's still valid after 90 days because life happens. You're out engaging with the customers and prospects, and you've got all these, there's certain numbers and targets you can talk about. When you talk about specific tactics and strategies, action items you're going to take to implement, which is the level of detail I like to see, in a plan is, okay, let's break it down into fairly finite detail. What you're going to do in this first quarter, and then we're going to revisit the plan in second quarter.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I typically like to look at, because I'm looking at a VP level that's having to be rolled up to my CEO, who's rolling it up to the board.
Well, that's why I'm saying we have the management plan and we've got the...
Right. So the manager's typically going to have a mandate. And it's going to say, I need you to do this in this quarter.
Right.
And let's say the way that I've done it is you've got a yearly number and quarterly goals against it.
Right.
So we look very generally at the yearly number. And then, like you said, how do we break it down per quarter? What's going to happen per quarter? And then use that, though, as the straw man to iterate on for the subsequent quarters.
Yeah, because I think that you said there's a mandate, right? This are your goals.
Yeah, you don't get to come up and say, "Hey, this is what we think we're going to do," because invariably it's lower than.
Right. So you start breaking that down. So you've got a goal. There's certain strategies that you're going to put in place to try to achieve that goal. And you have your existing process and so on. But are there any new initiatives you're going to put together? Are there specific things you're going to do that you said that really sort of break down? It's great. You've given your plan, your top level plan to managers. Now you need to start breaking this down. What's really going to happen? What are you going to do when you come into work on Monday, the first day of the year? What's that look like? And I think that certain frontline sales manager roles, they really don't have that in mind, right? They just sort of saying, "Oh gosh, we just sort of have to hit quota," but there's, they don't happen. It shouldn't happen by accident. There should be some sort of forethought and planning and things that you're doing that are deliberate to achieve a result. And so I like to see that there's, we got some strategies, and you can take those strategies, and that's sort of a hierarchy of strategies. And then you've got action items, or strategies and tactics, and then action items, and put some dates to them. Some of the major initiatives you're going to take. It could have to do with hiring. It could have to do with training. It could have to do with development activities. It could have to do with campaigns or blitzes you do. But have those things in there and understand what you expect the outcomes to be. How are they going to impact your plan? What are the risks associated with them? What are the investments associated with them?
Yeah, I think a key part of that is when you said what are the outcomes, and really measuring and keeping track of the outcomes. Like, are the activities and these strategies delivering against the set of outcomes that we need to have? And often when you think about it, 90 days is a short window.
Yeah. But we're talking about, again, it depends on the length of your sales cycle and the product and service you sell. But too often what I've seen with sales plans is companies put them together, and they have their salespeople put them together. And they say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to make these many calls on this type of customer, and we're going to," they sort of lay out something, and it's like, they get 30 days into it, and they're off track somewhere, right? Because maybe some opportunities came up they hadn't expected, and then they sort of get lost in the weeds, and they've lost the ability to focus and back on where they really thought they were heading. So I think it's always useful to have a roadmap. It's okay to take detours if the outcomes are positive, but I always want to see reps and frontline managers have some sort of roadmap so they sort of come in and not have any question, have any ambiguity at all in their mind about what they're doing each and every day.
Well, we also have a lot of data. Potentially, we have a lot of data.
Right.
Not everybody's collecting the data. Not everybody's looking at the data. But we have a lot of data around the size of customers that we're attracting, the average sale price, the conversion ratios. We've got a lot of data that we can back into at a very base level the types of activities and the quantity of activities we need in certain segments. So as an example, I'm used to seeing the reps roll up to a manager looking at in a 90-day plan, looking at, all right, here's my quarterly number. Here's the opportunities that I have that are of, let's say, large accounts. Let's say size A.
Right.
Here's size B. Here's size C. And I know sort of what the mix is that I generally get. And here's where I'm deficient. And so I need to figure out my strategy for where I see my deficiencies. And this is what the best managers that I've had at Sumo Logic were so good at this. And we would do the quarterly plans, quarterly business reviews. But then on a weekly basis, as we're tracking towards that, the best managers would say to me, okay, here's where we are against that plan. We had a couple of big deals fall out. We're tracking, this is what we're doing to shore up where we've fallen behind there. And so that they are using that quarterly plan on a weekly basis to stay on track, Right. But it has the strategic pieces, but also a lot of really quantitative pieces. Conversion rates, sales cycles, average deal size, size of account, that sort of thing. And a particular rep's forecast accuracy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things that I wrote about a couple of years ago and work with companies on is what I label calculating their lead deficit. So having reps really understand, and perhaps if you're in a larger inside sales organization, it might not be quite as appropriate, but for most of the companies that are out there that haven't adopted this, that have individual reps that are maybe more full lifecycle sales reps, is doing a calculation before the start of the year to understand exactly how many opportunities they need to develop in order to have a chance of meeting their number. And so it's a calculation that I put together, and I can give people a link to the article. But basically it says, you look at a bunch of factors. You look at average deal size that we talked about that you had, average sales price, how many leads you can expect to come in from inbound that you might get, how much business you might expect to get from existing customers. And based on the calculation that I put together, and based on your conversion rates, at the end, it pops out a number that says, look, these are the number of opportunities I need to develop or that I need to have in order to have a chance of meeting my number. And it's a great number for, like I said, a rep to have, especially a more of a full life cycle rep, not necessarily inside reps, is because then you know exactly the magnitude of the task in front of you. Look, you could ran it for one company, and this rep understood she needed to develop 140 new opportunities based on her close rate, deal size, so on, in order to be able to have a chance of meeting quota. And really laid it out. And so then she could start saying, okay, well, gosh, where are the missing pieces in my strategy, right? Where am I going to find these names? Where do I build my list? What are the offerings and the types of customers we're going to go after in terms of what's the ideal client profile for us? And sort of work down that list and really put together a solid plan for going out and addressing our territory.
Well, I think it's a big miss if reps don't do that regularly and don't know how to do it. And sometimes most often they need to be trained, at least early on, how to do it. Hopefully they don't have to be trained over and over and over. But it's...
Again, shocking.
I know, but sometimes it happens. So I remember one VP of sales role that I took, new in the role. There had been an issue with reps not hitting their numbers, and there were some morale issues as well. And when reps don't hit their numbers and there's some morale issues, sometimes people don't work also.
Sure. I mean,
they're
gonna
frustrated.
We're going to find, you're always, in sales organizations, you're always going to find the broad spectrum of people, right?
Right. And it's hard because the moods are contagious and it tends to spread in a sales org. And I remember telling this particular team, hey, listen, everybody gets a chance to try out. You guys get the first chance to try out for the team. Okay, you've got the first chance. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to, each of you, I had a workshop.
Right.
You're going to build your plan for the quarter. You're going to build your plan. And let me show you how you do it. We're going to do it. It's a simple math. And we're going to look at your conversion ratios and average deal size and sort of what you need from an activity standpoint. And we sat in a conference room and everybody, on their computers, filling out an Excel spreadsheet that I had the formulas in there. And as they were doing it, they came to these numbers of activities that they would have to do. And they said, this number of calls, how could we do this? This isn't going to, we can't do this many. And I said, this is math, okay? I'm okay if you don't want to do the number of calls. Here's what I need as the outcome. So this is what you've been doing historically. This is the deal size. This is how long it takes to close. You need to start changing. So this is the number of calls you've been making. And you know what? I promise you will not hit your number if you keep doing it the same way. I promise. I see it here. I promise.
Well, yeah, you can change the variables as long as you come up with the same outcome.
But that's the part of the plan. If you look at pieces of the plan and see, I don't want to make that many calls, find another variable. If you're
change
committed
the deal size, find a customer.
If you're committed to hitting the number,
right?
But what I see more often than not is sales reps are they're just doing it. They're just doing activities. They're not working against a plan. And they're not checking themselves against how many opportunities do I need? How many pricing conversations do I need to be in? How many at Sumo Logic POCs am I involved in? And I remember starting my own company and figuring out, all right, I better figure out what my metrics are. If I knew what I wanted to bring in at the end of every month, and I just backed into the activities that I needed in order to get the number of deals that I wanted. And then I had to test it and iterate on it. But I was just unforgiving for myself in terms of having a plan and following a plan because I didn't need a surprise. Oh, I wonder why I didn't make the money. No surprises.
Yeah. Well, I learned this lesson right at the beginning of my career where first job I had out of school, big computer company, they had this division that sold, I've probably talked about this on the air before, is sold big desktop adding machines. and you had to sell based on average sales price, we had to sell 25 of these things before, and they were hugely overpriced for the era they were in.
And it's an adding machine. Just so everybody, if nobody picked that up, I'm going to say it again. It's an adding machine.
Right.
Adding.
A calculator, basically.
That's simplified.
Yeah, it sold for $300 when you could buy them.
And it was giant.
And you could buy them for $50, little handheld ones. So we had to sell 25 of these things in order to qualify to get trained in selling computers. And so this was sort of the first cut for all the new hires that come in. If you couldn't sell your 25.
Yeah, if you can't sell an adding machine, dear God, you're not going to be able to grasp the complexity of a more complex
Well, what's sort of
processing.
interesting is you were selling something 6 times pricier with the same or less functionality than something you could buy for $50. But I took the opposite approach, which was, well, that sounded like death. Is we had a model that was programmable, that if I could sell 2 of them, it was worth 25 of the others. And so the price I had to pay is I had to teach myself how to program these things. But I knew there were companies that wanted, simple, one was a payroll tax calculation. So I taught myself how to program a payroll tax calculation one Saturday and went out and sold 2 of these things and I was done.
So Andy, I love that example.
Yeah.
Because you changed the variable.
Yeah.
Sometimes in companies they require, like I remember being at Xerox early, you couldn't say, okay, I'm going to sell 2 higher priced copiers instead of 10 fax machines. They were trying to move fax machines.
Oh, yeah. Well, we had that.
So sometimes it's specific.
Later on, we had that where we had various product groups, and we had to sell
that you need to sell.
We need to sell some of each group in order to make quota.
Yeah.
And the thing is, so they held on to these legacy adding machines about 10 years too long, and it was always a struggle at the end of the year because we had to sell some of these adding machines in order to make President's Club. So there are always a lot of sweet deals cut with our customers that bought a $1 million computer. Hey, don't you need some of these?
Yeah, and that's where, friends and family come in. I need you to pitch in and buy an adding machine.
Yeah.
They're probably worth something now.
I really doubt
like
it.
as a relic.
I sincerely
still
doubt
not.
No.
Okay, not useful then, not useful now.
Well, I'm
Marginal.
sure there was a period. There were probably
like 2 weeks.
about 10 years before we were selling them, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I remember those days. No, we've all had that. We've all, while we're talking about really antiquated equipment, there's still antiquated software that people are out selling for very high prices that you wonder, people are really buying that, and they do.
Well, I remember once we were sitting in this presentation with a guy from corporate that had come out and was presenting to all the sales managers about what was coming the next year in anticipation of us being able to put together our business plans for the following year. And he's saying, well, hey, this is what's coming and so on. And none of us believed that they'd ever hit the dates, which they never did. But also what they're talking about were things that were not very exciting. And I remember a guy sitting next to me, raising his hand saying, I think I've got a motto for our company, or a tagline. And the guy said, what was it? This guy was absolutely fearless. There was science that says, yeah, I think we're going to call it Today's Solutions Tomorrow.
I am going to remember that. I love it. Today's solutions tomorrow.
Yeah, that's our promise.
Or yesterday's solutions today.
This was the same company whose CEO stated, and you can find this on the internet,
because nothing goes away.
That's right. Stated customer service policy was, we want to keep our customers surly, but not rebellious.
Gosh, that would never survive today in a SaaS environment.
Wouldn't survive in any environment.
I know, but you know what? You could get away with it.
But there are companies that maybe inadvertently do that. But this was the stated policy because these guys believed that the customers most likely to buy additional product and services from me were those that were just slightly unhappy, because they had to buy more than to fix it. It was hugely cynical.
Yeah, let's not share the name of that company, because I don't even care if they're still around or not. I don't want to know. I don't want to ask questions because I don't want to know who it is.
They're not around.
I don't want to know who it is. No kidding.
But they managed to.
Of course they're not around.
Well, not in their old form, but they are still around as part of another company. But yeah, when I think about that.
Let's hope that thinking has evolved for that individual. Let's hope that they have...
He's been dead for 20, 30 years. I mean, so he's gone. But, I mean, just think about how old-fashioned that was. And yet, you still get experiences now and then with companies that's, even though they don't state it the same way, they sort of treat you the same way.
Do you think, Andy, that sales, getting back to the question of planning...
Sure.
Do you think most companies require managers to submit or present a quarterly plan?
Not in my experience, no.
Which means they're probably not asking reps to submit or present their quarterly plan.
Yeah, no, I think that's the case. I mean, that's been my experience. And part of what we see is these days, let's say with certain companies that have, let's say, an inside sales team, they think their process is a substitute for the plan.
Process is not a plan.
I understand that, but I'm saying that...
No, I know you know. I know you understand it.
But I think that some people adhere to that, right? We've got a process. We keep executing the process. Whatever number you give us, we're just going to scale the team or do something, and we'll be able to hit it. And it's funny how even companies you think that are run by fairly sophisticated people... I've got one client that I work with on occasion. And, every year it's like, okay, well, have you put your plan together? Let's sit down and do that. And we actually, one year we sort of put it together and went through the process, and he got it, but then sort of set it on the shelf and didn't do it. And then wondered why they weren't hitting their numbers.
I love plans. I mean, I really do. I love plans.
Well, I like thinking. This is the thing, is I want people to think. To me, sales is a thinking person's profession. It's not for robots, right? If you want to succeed at sales, you have to be thoughtful and deliberate about what you do.
Well, and this is why I love early stage, is because lots of thinking required of building and creating the plans and executing on the plans and figuring out, and you don't have all the X's and the Y's figured out.
No.
You don't. So there's a lot of, you've got to keep doing the planning, I love that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's this balance, right? I mean, there was a article I was reading recently about the CEO of McDonald's and having to execute the turnaround that he's executed with them, and it sounds a little strange when you say it, but he was saying, act, don't plan. What he's saying is, wasn't really saying don't plan, but what he was saying is put the premium on action, right? You're never going to perfect your plan, so you need to have a plan of attack, but then go do it.
Yeah,
and I see so many companies that planning becomes this quote-unquote exercise where they get down into the weeds a little too far and they're trying to make it perfect. And there is no such thing, right?
Yeah, so that is a really good point, because probably when I say that I love planning, it's not I like the thinking part of the planning, but then what's fun is is the doing.
Yeah,
is the
testing
doing
it,
against the doing against the plan. Is this working? Is it not? How do I? Because it's like a big puzzle, and it's such a fun puzzle, and I like that. I like the challenge of continually figuring out the puzzle. You got this plan? Let's go test it out. Okay, let's modify. Let's tweak. Let's change this. Let's look at this variable. But I got to get to this goal. But action is such an important part of the plan. If action's left out and we're just doing PowerPoints in a room, I have zero interest. In fact, that makes me mad. Okay, so that's where I start to get angry.
Bridget mad. Yes.
Definitely don't get me mad. I don't get mad very easily. And it's not.
Bridget doesn't get mad; she gets even.
And I don't even get even, but
I'm just kidding here.
I was going to say, be careful when but I'm not a violent mad.
Oh, good. As we're sitting 3 feet apart.
Because I'm starting to get really heated.
Yeah.
Yeah, but things like that. I don't waste my time, because that feels like a waste of time. And we can't get time back. We haven't figured out how to manufacture more time.
No. Favorite topic of mine, as you know. Yeah.
I do.
Yeah, as you know. Yeah, so planning important, but at some point it has to translate to action. And yeah, perfection is the enemy in most cases.
Which is good, because I am not a perfectionist.
No, I've never been accused of that myself either.
No.
But thinking. Love to have people think and think before they act. That's important. Right?
Completely agreed.
Oh, good. I thought we were going to end on a note where you didn't agree.
No,
okay.
no. No, I'm going to say thinking doesn't matter. No, yes, I want thinking, not robots.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a lot that I was reading on the plane recently, or when I was flying down, just around machine learning.
Yes.
And artificial intelligence, and how machine learning, the next wave of it is really a more intelligent, thoughtful, because machines, they still don't have the cognitive that they don't do well with a lot of context.
Right.
They can't pick up context. So we still need the thinking cabeza.
Okay. Well, especially when you bring Spanish into it. Yeah, well, the context is really important. That's hopefully what continues to keep us
separated from, before you know it, they won't even need us. No, I think we're a long ways from that.
Well, I was just, as we digress from planning, but I also was just reading an article, I don't know if it may have been in Wired, about artificial intelligence, and wherever this was, but it's talking about, people very serious thinkers saying one of the most obvious things, which is we need to be able to way to turn these things off that they can't prevent us from turning themselves off. The thinking machines are, they're thinking that far out. And some people don't think it's that far away. I mean, I'm not sure it'll be in your lifetime or my lifetime, but
it is probably sooner than I think it is. Things happen quickly.
Well, we've got these huge artificial intelligence engines we're dealing with now with Siri and Cortana and Alexa, and all those things are all...
It's amazing.
All AI, yeah. Yeah, it's very, very significant. What will be the impact on sales? Well, that could be a subject of another episode. But I think in the meantime, to your point, yeah, they can't handle the context. And what we find is that context in sales is what keeps humans employed in the business. And it's also very complex. Even the simplest interactions between humans is very complex.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Facial expression, body language,
tone,
usage of words, and yeah, undoubtedly, as you said, through machine learning or AI, we're going to get much more adept at machines helping us with that. But in the meantime, yeah, that's our province and our domain.
Keep thinking.
I keep thinking.
Keep thinking.
That's how we keep.
That's right. Robots at bay.
The robots at bay. Excellent. All right. As always, great to speak with you. And friends, thank you for spending time with us again today. This has been another episode of Frontline Friday with Bridget, Gleason, and Andy Paul. And we'll look forward to talking to you next week.
Have a great one.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you heard and want to make sure you don't miss any upcoming episodes, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.com. For more information about today's guest, visit my website at andypaul.com.